how the Black Lives Matter organization was co-opted in those air quote riots or protests. How they were dropping off bricks. We all remember those videos of groups dropping off bricks in neighborhoods before the night falls. But somehow we keep coming back to this Antifa group that nobody has a clue who they really are. But when white men march down our city streets wearing exact same uniforms and exact same masks and marching in unison, we know exactly who they are, but they're not our concern, supposedly. The American people, that is. But as a black man, I'll state again, you'll never be able to get me with this boogeyman aspect from the left-wing hate groups that they're trying to push, because we don't know who they are, and neither does we. But we definitely know the right-wing hate groups, because they were all parts on January 6th after they stormed the Capitol. When they were jumping out of U-Haul vans to storm the Capitol. Until we start having real conversations about those groups, then we'll just keep having conversations about the boogeyman.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to Aaron, followed by Don.
Yeah, how you doing, great. Yeah. I mean, taking this seriously is just kind of ridiculous as a broad thing. This guy's pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted of drug trafficking on a massive scale. Yeah, he says, they're going after these Venezuelan boats for drugs. Right? And this is the kind of consistency that this man has. Like, there's just nothing that we should take seriously in terms of there's a lot of people who I think want to find a way to apply some sort of logic to this or something that we can hang our hat on. He is, and to understand it, this man is not clear about the rule of law. He just tried to indict Letitia James for the third time on trumped up charges. Bullshit. Except, this is a guy who's gone after, people who just were doing their jobs. This is not someone who believes in justice. This is not someone who is even pretending at this point to use the government for the benefit of the American people. I mean, what about what he's doing would add to that? And the people who need to be called out the most is Trump told us who he was, and people voted for him. There shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I can't imagine who here is oh my God, I can't believe that Trump would go after people if he considers his enemies. I mean, whoever predicted that except for, everybody? How could you not see this? Of course, he was doing it the first go around, maybe not as aggressively, but he was going after quote unquote left wing groups or left wing radicals or whatever. He's been blaming quote unquote left wing radicals for almost everything, when the truth is that no left wing radical is in power in this country in ever a certain living memory. Who are the left wing radicals that are in power? Bernie hasn't been in power. We're going further left of him. People around government, what are we actually talking about? There's none of this is real. When it comes to violence, we've had radical left-wing violence in this country. It absolutely happened. You can look at the Weather Underground. You can look at the environmental radicals from the 70s who put spikes in trees and attack walkers and things like that. I forget what they were called. Left maybe. Anyway, the point is those were actual violent radicals. Who is that today? Tell me about the big Antifa massacre. Or the, what? What are we talking about? There's nothing to even point to. But we can look at right-wing violence. And by the way, religious extremist violence is right-wing violence. The right is the party of conservatism, of religious traditionalism. That's where we place religious radicals on the political spectrum. I don't know how you could ever put a religious radical on the left. So many right-wing governments have been religiously radical. That's been a hallmark of many of them, not all of them, but many of them. So to say in a moment like this. I can tell you who they are. They should be exposed for their hypocrisy over and over and over again. They don't believe in free speech. They were grifting at best. And maybe they're just famous people at worst who don't believe in the First Amendment. I mean, this is a president who has attacked journalists over and over and over again. What does he care about the First Amendment? We know he doesn't care about it. He just called a journalist pity the other day. Like, I mean, this is someone who described the journalist Jamal Khashoggi as, so what do you call it, controversial or something like that when it came up when MBS was here. As if that somehow justifies him being literally cut into pieces. So I just, like, the sort of sheen of reasonability, and I feel like some people are giving this as if there might be some kind of rationale that makes any sense as anything other than the evil that it apparently is, I think is a disservice. And I've said this in this room before, but there's a whole bunch of, sort of centrist, traditional liberals who have a lot to answer for right now. And this is the kind of reason why a lot of people have given up traditionally, and that's actually what I'm more worried about today right now. Because Trump is a shit, so we always knew him to be, but it's the sort of centrist liberals that I think are embarrassing themselves at the moment. Thank you.
Aaron, I'd like to ask you if they go through with what is at least implied as a threat of taking law enforcement action against political adversaries, and if that, in fact, is challenged in the courts. Do you have any faith that if it ultimately reaches the Supreme Court, he will be held in check?
Well, I'm not sure that the Supreme Court checking him is going to be treated with the force that it used to be treated with. I mean, I have some faith that there are, because we just look at Tish James. We can look at what he said about Jack Smith. We can look at what he did with James Comey. Like, he charges people with crimes where, there's no basis for charging for the crime. So we already know that he's going to do this. I mean, it's been done. There's just more. And the people who are less public and have probably, therefore, have, less ability to defend themselves. So I expect it. And the question is going to be, especially for those centrist liberals that I'm talking about, is what are you going to do? Because that's going to be the group that's not fully under attack. They're sort of the next group up. And they have to decide if they're willing to stand for their values or not. And thankfully, a lot of judges have. And they deserve to be applauded early for the work that they've done. And, like, for example, dismissing charges against Tish James. That's great. And hopefully that continues to happen. But there's going to be a lot of people who are harassed. There's going to be a lot of people whose speech is chilled. We've already seen this over and over and over again, whether it's journalists, people who dared to hold Trump accountable for what I think are clear crimes in some cases. So, I think this is already a constitutional crisis, and it's going to be like a series of them, because the Republicans lack any spine to stand up to Trump. And until that happens, they're the majority. So what are you going to do? I mean, maybe the Democrats win that midterms or something, and maybe there's some kind of check on his power, but like right now, there's almost no checks. And even institutions that have helped in the first term, like the military, have been so cleaned out that you have to start to wonder, like, what's going to happen with the number of generals that are going to either sidelined or pushed out of the military. Like, what does that look like as an institution? Like, is he successfully, corrupted that as well? I hope not, sincerely, but I think there's very few institutions left to protect us from this kind of, I'll be nice and call it pro-fascist behavior. Probably just call it authoritarian behavior, because it clearly is that.
By the way, with regard to Tish James, there's a story out today that says that Ken Bondi wanted to lay charges against her for a third time, but somehow someone in the administration, and I don't know who it would be, above her, maybe advisors to her, told her not to do it, but then they haven't. But she wanted to go after her a third time.
I heard that she did. Maybe I heard the story wrong, but I thought that she did got like thrown at. Maybe it was fine, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, whatever. Thank you, Aaron. We'll go to double follow. Thank you.
I agree. Yeah, I don't exactly know the left-wing groups that are going after. I had from with some Antifa. I mean, I participated in some of the left-wing protest movements of 2020, and people died. I witnessed someone get murdered in front of me, and other people were getting murdered, within days of, or at least gone, and within days of events, and it was all part of kind of the chaos that I helped create as part of my participation in that. Even when we're doing these protests, people were like graffitiing, spray painting, like just tearing up the city of Seattle where I was participating in this. And I felt really uneasy about this. And even at that time, as people were protesting, against the police, I suppose, in some cases, brutality or overreach or corruption. I was on board with, greater or better policing, better public services, more accountability, more justice, those sort of things. But even at the time, I was looking around at the chaos part of this and thinking, looking back at like the civil rights movement, people are pretty fast, they're bringing their best selves to these things, and it was just absolute, pandemonium. It was just like an excuse for anarchy. And
during the civil rights movement, there was no excuse for anarchy. Is that what you just said?
Sorry. No, I thought it was well organized and people brought decency back in the civil rights movement. I'm saying, contrast that with 2020, what I participated in. It was just anarchy.
So were those folks reflective of some organized network that is a clear and present danger to the United States of America today, and therefore justifies this memorandum from the Attorney General, in your opinion, since you see it up close and personal, and presumably understand how it works? Is she spot on with this?
I haven't read the memorandum yet, I apologize, but I think what I would say is we shouldn't tolerate criminality. There's none of the...
No. And we already ascertained, I think we all agree, at least I said so during the opening salvo, that there are laws against criminality and that they ought to be enforced no matter who's breaking the law. That wasn't the question. Do you need me to repeat it?
Maybe I do.
The question is, since you have firsthand knowledge of what happened in Seattle, do you believe that there are organizations that on the left in particular that present a clear and present danger to the United States of America, and that maybe they're the same people who were in Seattle, I don't know, and that they deserve the kind of investigation that brings together all of it. Of course you do. Very convenient. Free followed by Merrill. Free. You're up, buddy.
I'm here. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, just listening in, man. I didn't catch the whole article. I kind of got just what you're saying, whatever, so address that. First, talking about addressing certain ideologies of the left, if that's what's being said, of course, activities or things that's pending, such as calling for violence, planning terrorist attacks. Of course, I think we all can see that as black and white, that they need to address that and be aware of that and move on that like so. Same thing with ideology. If there's terrorist groups operating in America and they have, or any group for that matter, have terrorist ideologies, that would make sense to highlight them. And I know he said left or rhetorical, you're right, which I'm not surprised about, but I feel like I'm in the spotlight zone because we haven't lived through what we lived through in the last several years. And it's not to say that just inherently that police 24/7, but there's certain aspects of it. Calling for violence, if you look at my PTR, that is something that happened on Charlie Kirk. That's someone created a 3D shooting of him, and so. And not only that, many of the left calls for more violence online.
Was the left, was some organized leftist organization network responsible for the assassination of Charlie Kirk? I hadn't heard that, but please, if it's the case, make it.
So right. So it seems that, which goes to the Antifa point, it seems that Antifa does advocate for regular violence. They do it for violence. To the person who spoke before me, who said, which is weird that nobody knows who it is. Many people do. I was going to post a link, but I see you guys have to chat off. There's a guy named Nick Shirley who interviews him routinely. So they are an organization. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what's the guy name?
I looked at their organization.
Shirley.
That's such an organization being anti-fascist.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's a definition that you get from there's a definition you get from the Encyclopedia Britannica, but all of those people were online. All of them.
Right, so Al-Qaeda had I just want to make sure you said Al-Qaeda.
Hamas,
ISIS, yeah.
Islamic Jihad, all of those guys.
Gotcha. Right, and it was operating out of America with their websites.
Operating transnationally.
Gotcha. So the bottom line is, I don't know if they have a website, and I don't think it's necessary for them to have an organization. I don't think it's a requirement. But regardless of it,
I apologize for interrupting. I just want to focus in on my previous question. Do you believe that Tyler Robinson is a member of some organized leftist organization that promulgated his actions in his alleged killing of Charlie Kirk?
Not necessarily, and I don't think anybody needs to be, just for clarity, I don't think anybody like this BLM or any other feminist groups or the LGBT groups, I don't think anybody is or necessarily have to belong to the group itself. Like they take up oaths and they have a membership and all that shit. It's a matter of them believing in the ideology.
Yeah, and you consider the Black Lives Matter and the various LGBTQ plus organizations to be extremists?
No, not necessarily. Certain aspects of all those groups are extremists.
Yeah, because you just mentioned them, so I just want to clarify your point.
Fair enough. Yeah. I wouldn't say the group in and of itself is, but certain aspects, certain ideologies those groups share, and it's becoming more prominent within those groups. So it's not like so with all groups, you always have your fringe and stream that's willing to act on certain things, and you have the general overview of the group. So if a group feels like that, blacks can't be racist, and if they decide to loot or steal or whatever the case may be, as a form of reparations or retribution for ills of the past, women can be sexist or something like that. So therefore, if a woman happens to have a false rape allegation of a man, it's just due for the woman who actually didn't get justice, shit like that. So
expand on that for me and explain how, as you just stated, those various groups have become more extremist.
Yeah. Like I said, believing that you can burn down cities or attack activists as well as political people. There's tons of videos of random people just wearing a MAGA shirt or a hat, or just having general conversations, like I said, Nick Shirley, getting attacked by people who happen to be on the left. And these are regular people, like I said, they don't necessarily belong to any particular group. It's just the fact that they're coming from that particular side. But then you do have people who are part of these particular groups who do tend to act on these things. So
let me go back to what I said in the very opening of our discussion today and see how this how you reconcile your commentary to the memorandum. So I'm going to quote verbatim again from the Washington Post. Bondi's December 4th memorandum, which was first reported by journalist Ken Klippenstein, and then later confirmed by the Justice Department to the Washington Post, listed, and these are quotes, anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, opposition to law and immigration enforcement, radical gender ideology, and hostility towards traditional views on family, religion, and morality, as some of the political agendas espoused by the individuals
who might merit investigation. Now, I don't know whether that's what you were responding to in your commentary, but I would like for you to focus in on what exactly the memorandum addresses and whether you feel that that is justified and legal for law enforcement and the Justice Department to go after people who fall into any of the above named categories.
Yeah, so I can't speak for them specifically, but I'm interpreting it just like a lot of us are, based on like the knowledge of some of these things. So, for example, the capitalist aspect. Luigi Maggio, I believe was his name. He just killed the guy. Of course, we know about the United Healthcare guy getting killed, right? A lot of great deal of people celebrate, just like the Charlie Kirk situation, so the Trump getting shot. Is people celebrating these things, and again, it's not just a celebration of it; it's the call for these things. So, if I was to sit here in your room and call for violence against anybody,
you would be removed from the stage.
Exactly right. But not only that, if you knew me personally, had enough information on me, you could actually report me for a terroristic threat, right? And that could be legally enforced. So I don't see the exception for where it's happening in the general public of people using social media to call for violence for other people, and that makes sense to me. If they want to enforce the laws, then they should be able to enforce it. And it seems that a certain group that seems to dominate this particular ideology that assassin culture or violent culture is acceptable to get your point across. So if that's what they're saying in a nutshell, then I agree with that. I don't think they're saying that we're just going to arrest people or police people for saying just anything we disagree with. It's like if you call them for certain things that are illegal, we're going to enforce it. That's the way I interpret it.
So we know that the Justice Department identifies in terms of quantity that the deadliest domestic threat has been from the right, from right-wing extremists. So if in fact what the Justice Department has articulated and the historic assessments show that groups such as white supremacist anti-government militias from the right are a greater threat, why do you suppose that the administration is specifically targeting the left? Is it because the left is a greater threat in reality than what has historically been correct? Or is it because these are folks who tend to be opposed to the policy of the current administration?
Well, two major things that makes that statute law that they refer to. First off, they don't count in a lot of leftist attacks or violence. So whether it be the bill of rights,
you're saying that in the FBI statistics, which are published every year, that those statistics purposely are fudged to not include left-wing violence?
Yes.
And how do you come to that conclusion?
Because when you look at it, what's tallied from the actual stuff that happened on left to what it reports, it is a big miss. Like I said,
has anybody actually investigated that claim and published statistics that back up what you just said?
Yeah, there's a few of them. I don't have on top of my head. I can follow you, so I can send them to you through your back channel.
I would love to see them because
absolutely.
I'm a bit of a student of all this, and this is the first I've heard that allegation. But what do you say to those who are opposed to the president, who believe that he is attempting to stifle legally protected dissent against his administration? You don't believe that that's happening?
No, I don't believe that's happening. Clearly, he's a person, so he doesn't like people disagreeing with him or whatever. He's not just a person, he has his personality. So, that's bottom line is on a personal level, he doesn't like it. But as far as enforcing it by law, I don't think that's what he's saying. I mean, he's been this way since he got into office.
No, this is not just rhetoric. This is a memorandum from the Attorney General to all federal law enforcement agencies. So this is not just the president's rhetoric, addressing the nation and maybe telling the truth as he did yesterday, or maybe not telling the truth as he did yesterday. We understand political rhetoric. This is an actual decision that has been made by the current Attorney General. So I don't think you can be dismissive of it, by saying that this is just rhetoric.
No, I'm not. I was going to go into. So tell me what this means. He says memorandum. What is he asking them to do? Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I'm not going to read the whole article again.
That's all. Yeah, let me just give a summary of what he's saying. Because if I understand what you're implying, you make it seem that he's targeting people who are saying things that he doesn't like. So therefore he's targeting people.
So let me ask you this, and then we'll go on in a different manner. What would you say to people who interpret this memorandum as being an attempt to put down political dissent? What would you say to me, who is one of those who's concerned about that, to allay my concerns?
Yeah, if you're not breaking the law, you ain't got nothing to worry about. That's what I would say. So if you disagree with Trump, and if you want to say things about him that is discouraging or inflammatory, whatever, that's fine. But as long as you don't do anything illegal, I think you would be fine.
But it's okay for them to investigate me for saying those things.
No, well, again, if it's not illegal, I don't think they should investigate you if you're not saying anything illegal.
To make anti-Christian commentary?
No, absolutely not.
Well, but that's included in the memo.
Right, but again, it depends.
So
So for
why if I am a person and I'm not somebody who's anti-Christian, but I'm just saying, what if I were a person who's anti-Christian? What if I stood on the street corner or I put on social media that Christianity is an evil religion? Do you think that it is lawful for the United States government to have federal agents or agencies investigate me for my rhetoric?
not for that. No, not for that. But let me give an example of something I think that you would and should be investigated for. If that was a mass shooting of Christian children, like we have seen, and someone said, we need more of this, that would be something I thought, yeah,
that's illegal already. That's all illegal already.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I don't think this is
RB.
I am thoroughly confused by the last caller, the last speaker.
Well, you shouldn't be, because I think it's important to hear the voices of folks like Free, because there are people who truly believe this. And I know that people like you and me who are very concerned about this memo, it's almost as if we're on two different realities. The previous caller, right? And he's not alone. There are people who support what the president is doing. They don't see this as being, they would say, Jerry, by even making a room on this, you're being an alarmist unnecessarily. That's basically what he said. His response to me is, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I have nothing to worry about. Well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, why are they investigating me if I make anti-Christian comments? To use that example. But I don't think we should be confused. I think people like you and me who are concerned about this should listen very carefully and thank Free for making the comments that he did, because it gives us insight into the thought process of those who would support what the president is doing.
You're right. I should have rephrased it. Number one, he labeled a couple of groups. He labeled one in particular as being violent, but he has nothing. I know of no violence that they have committed, but it doesn't matter. He had nothing to back him up. He said it's out there. So that troubles me, that when people want to come on a stage, a critical thinking stage, I welcome them to do that. However, they should understand it is more helpful, even for them, to have something that they can hang their hat on that is true.
Well, when he said that he likes Am Channel, what I would recommend is that he click on the link above and put it in the chat for all of us to see his documentation.
Yeah. I'm certainly troubled by the memo. And I'm troubled by it because, quite frankly, someone's going to come knocking on my door if I say what I really feel like saying right now. I'm going to give it a try. Just make sure you guys come and get me and bail me out. The people that I think are the most anti-American at this particular time is the president, the head of the DOJ, the head of the FBI, anybody who is going to write that memo and follow that memo. That's the ones that I think, that is not America. That's not what we are. And that's what dictators do. That's what people do when they want to control your thoughts, control your words, and want your neighbors to come out so that they can come on your door. Your neighbor turned you in for something. That's not what this. We are a country of laws. And by the way, maybe we shouldn't worry so much. Maybe I should have some. I'm not on the left. I'm not a leftist, even though I am always called that because I'm not. Anybody who's a Democrat would go commit some crime. I wouldn't. But hey, all you do is you commit these crimes. You disable people, punch out their eye, cause one to have a heart attack, tether them, do all kinds of things, taser them, make them lose their fingers. You'll get pardoned. Isn't that how? Who fight democracy and want to overturn elections? Those people are patriots. They should be pardoned. But those of us who just disagree.
Often in history, Meryl, when we look back at things that have happened of a totalitarian or dictatorial nature, we kind of say, how could that happen? How could people behave in the manner in which they are? And I'm starting to think this, based on what's happening contemporarily. A person takes a position, an honorable position. Let's say that person applies for and becomes a federal law enforcement officer, never imagining that he or she would be ordered to just grab people based on racial profiling, detain them sometimes over a period of days, and then sorting out later whether the detention was even justified. I'm sure nobody I shouldn't say nobody, but the vast majority of people who signed up to be Border Patrol agents or ICE officers didn't think that they were signing up to do this. And then they're ordered to do something that they never imagined that they would be ordered to do. It's not so easy to say no, because ultimately they're putting their job in jeopardy, and you take a job in order to be able to survive. You need a job to survive and to provide for your family. And imagine also that you work for some federal law enforcement agency, of which there are a number, and you are ordered to make intelligence on your neighbors based on their political ideology, and you start compiling files on people because the Attorney General, the top law enforcement officer of the nation, to whom you ultimately must report through the channels, says this is your job now. Probably most of the people who have received this memo never anticipated when they took their jobs that this is something that they would be ordered to do. How easy is it, and I'm not excusing those who don't, but I'm recognizing how easy is it to say, no, this is unlawful. This is un-American. This is contrary to the Constitution of the United States. I'm a high school graduate. I'm a college graduate. I know what the First Amendment says, and people have a right to espouse what they espouse so long as they're not provoking people into violence. I mean, the President of the United States espoused what he espoused, and there was no illegal sense for that because he was exercising his First Amendment rights. So, and some people might say he violated the law by doing that, but history has shown that he was not held legally accountable for making it to violate people's rights. I think this is how we slip down that slope to a society. Yeah, of course I'm talking to you specifically. People slip down how a society slips down that slope, and we look back and we say, how the hell did that happen here? How the hell did that happen there? The prime example is the very liberal society of Germany. How did Germany become a totalitarian? How could that happen? It wasn't part of their ecosystem. I think this is how it happens.
I wanted to mention that, when you do, a lot of people say you do.
I didn't say the Holocaust. I just said, I didn't say the Holocaust. Okay, hold on a second, Meryl. Just for clarification, I purposely didn't say the Holocaust. I just said how that society changed, how the liberalism of the society changed to the point where people stood by while their fellow German citizens, and then of course, same thing in Poland and other countries, Czechoslovakia, all these other countries, how they ended up getting rounded up. How could they have allowed that to happen? We say that, looking back and studying it. And I think this is how.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. You could trace it, and you could follow the language that was used to get people riled up, to appeal to their emotions. It happens right here. It has happened with this president. If you really pay attention, and I apologize, I didn't mean the Holocaust. I meant what the Germans did, the Nazis did, because that began a certain way. And yes, and anybody who's ever gone to a concentration camp now today and went to them, a museum, a concentration camp, look around what's in that area, and you will find out where all the people lived around there, and that they may have known or should have known what was happening. But to me, you bring up a good point, and that's that people don't expect to be told to do something when they get a job. That happens with everybody in the Department of Justice. All those prosecutors who left, they said they didn't believe they would ever be asked to do things that they thought were wrong. However, we have people who were confirmed by, which really confuses me, who were actually confirmed knowing what Trump's policies were going to be. And they wanted to be with the power. We do have a major problem here. And we have a Supreme Court that said to a president that he can commit a crime as long as he's doing it as the president. As a president, they thought that we had a Susie Wiles who made us think in those interviews that she might be the person that was going to try to be this.
And one that doesn't make the Nazi analogy always apt for was the one where the Republic was 10 years old. Germany's attachment to being a democratic society was not long fulfilled. It was young, helps by the Allied powers set that stuff up. I think some of the other things are comparable, but also what she deserves, not what she needs. I've always wished the system works the other way around, where you get what you needed and not what you desired. But in the American system, we get what we desire, not what we need.
So does that suggest to you that and if that's the case, then my question takes on even greater importance. I don't believe that's the case. But at any rate, what does that say about us as a society? Is that saying that we endorse what this memo represents as a society?
I'm not sure. As the Romans would say, and the historians in Rome would say, the mob is fickle. They go from thinking things are a good idea to not thinking things are a good idea all in the drop of a hat. Large groups of people don't do that. For some individuals, the motivations are different, and people can be smarter. But mass groups of people tend to change their minds overly frequently. And they do so in a way that is always guided by emotion and never by fact. And it doesn't help us that we're in a populist moment when we're eroding some of the ways some of the informal norms of republics. That's not helpful. But part of this problem is that people are not involved. I will beat that one till the day I die.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead.
I was just thanking you. I didn't mean to cut you off. But I'll thank you anyway. Thank you, Marshall, and thank you, Merrill. We'll go to William, followed by Barbie.
Thanks for having me up. The right to petition your government for redress of grievances, the right to challenge the government, that is fundamentally who we are, or at least who we're supposed to be. So investigating people for being enemies of the administration because they, when J. Edgar Hoover investigated Martin Luther King.
So we managed, William, to get through that period to where we are today. So are the concerns that I and others have expressed here therefore overblown?
No, they're not. They're serious concerns. Russell Vogt, one of the main architects of Project 2025, so principles of liberal democracy to a Viktor Orban illiberal democracy style of government. And we're backsliding. We are a backsliding democracy. And great strides have been made. Great progress has been made. Mentions would be characters like Stephen Miller and Russell Vogt, and all the people that have actively just failed. It ties together the failure to abide by rules of war, using our U.S. Navy and Marines to basically act like privateers and grab oil tankers off the coast of Venezuela. Sounds like we're no longer committed to a rules-based economy with free trade and a rules-based democracy. We're privateers. And there's a backslide. And these events are not isolated.
Thank you for that, William. Barbie, you get the last word today.
Oh my goodness. Hi, it's good to be here. I am reading through the memo. I have been reading through it. I think, as always, what is really challenging is the fact that there's always a mixture of good and bad. And I'm very supportive, obviously, of prevention when there's actual threats. I know there's all kinds of stuff happening all the time, and sleeper cells and all the things, and definitely very increased targeting of, for example, the Jewish population and all, recognizing all of that. The problem I have with this is that these are the same, and I, again, coming from my own background, etc., but people writing these memos, certainly a lot of the Trump supporters, etc., are the same people that say there's a war on Christmas, which thankfully that we haven't been hearing that now for a few years very much, but there was we're being persecuted because, anything that's going to, assassination attempts, all of that, clearly very, very bad. But then you talk about profit, and I run a campaign that's saying one thing and it's different than what the government wants the people to believe. Is this targeted intimidation? I know it sounds a little bit like I'm stretching things, but I'm, based on what one of the previous callers was saying, well, if you don't do anything, that's not people doing necessarily violence. And yes, you got to get rid of the funding. But it's just this whole thing is I'm not an attorney.
But from what you're saying, Barbie, sorry for interrupting, but it can actually become assets and not concentrating on the aforementioned terrorist groups, which we all want to be eliminated and in order to protect the homeland, and you're spreading those resources thin to go after some of the, named groups of people who are not part of any terrorist organizations, but who have an ideology that is in opposition to that of the current administration, which I understand the current administration believes is not favorable to the well-being of the American people and that we need to be protected from that ideology. I get that. Isn't that counterproductive? Because it diverts resources from where they're needed toward something that doesn't even exist. I mean, Antifa is specifically mentioned, and Antifa, there is no such organization. So if I'm investigating some sleeper cell, and I'm told, well, in addition to that caseload, Agent Gary, you have to investigate Antifa, and you have to produce a memo that our agency must give by a Friday deadline to the FBI to show that we are investigating Antifa as well in our community, and we're under deadline, so put your resources on that right now. Isn't that counterproductive?
Well, I think if everything is terrorism, then nothing is terrorism. We come back to that, and I think that will dilute resources. One of the concerns I have, and when I look at this, it doesn't just say use violence. It says that or the threat of violence to advance political and social agendas. So I just don't trust. I think that the interpretation of this is up to all kinds of interpretation. So including, and this is where the thought police part comes in. So including, and you've read this a couple of times, but I'm going to do it again, including opposition to law and immigration enforcement. Okay, well, maybe, I am for law enforcement, but some of the things that are happening with immigration, I am opposed to, so therefore you could...
Maybe you're John Lennon. Imagine there are no borders.
Exactly. And then here we go, of course, extreme view would be definitely a threat to the country,
but just the fact that I advocate for open borders, maybe I believe that. And I go publicly and say, we should open the borders. We should have no border control. It's inhumane to have border control. Law enforcement apparatus?
I mean, potentially, depending. I'm going to skip past the anti-Americanism and anti-capitalism and go straight to the anti-Christian. For you as someone who is multilingual when it comes to conservative evangelical Christianity, this is not just about one man, one woman, one child. This is also about feminism, about women leadership. All of those things are considered within the most conservative wings. Feminism is a very bad word. Women in leadership, certain levels of leadership, is anathema. And I know I sound like I'm, extreme here, but I have to keep repeating, as I put in the chat every now and then, Pete Hegseth and his pastor do not think women should vote. Certainly the head of the household can vote, and the woman should vote according to how the head of the household believes she should vote. So there's so much more here that could be, hopefully this particular administration wouldn't do this, but you could push this to so far, so many limits, and also, not so many extremes of what is a hostile view towards a traditional family. There's many things there, but the anti-Christianity part is also kind of completely, this whole thing is just not thought through. I guess that's my problem. There's so many contradictions because, newsflash, within Christianity, there are many, 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 many denominations, as well as the greater, bigger branches. Scott could talk about this too, but you have also got Orthodox Christianity. You have got Catholics. You have got, a lot of the traditional evangelicals are very anti-Catholic because of all the quote-unquote idolatry. Like, what are we actually going to enforce here? This is just not thought through. And on top of that, we are a pluralistic society, so I really don't need the government defending my religious beliefs. My Christianity is my Christianity. So this is very slippery and even the ignorance. I mean, one of the things it's talking about, further the ideology that paints legitimate government authority carvings that were on the Charlie Kirk's, the assassination bullets, sadly. And those carvings they've been taking them at face value and saying, it's hate fascist catch, so they're anti-fascist or Antifa. But if you dig deeper, the young people right now, a lot of people are like, this guy was just a troll, he didn't mean any of that. There's a whole bunch of other things going on with this guy. So it feels, and I'll land because I'm saying a lot of things, it's just contradictory and too perfect for abuse is pretty much where I land on it.
Too perfect for abuse. I love that phraseology. I hope you don't mind if I steal it. I said you were the last speaker, but I note that Brent fell off the stage and managed to climb his bloodied hands and knees to the stage in order to give us the actual final commentary of the day.
Yeah, first, I do think I need to take a bow. I don't have to be banned from your space, but I did largely get that speech right. It was economics. But to this subject, Rules for Dictators, a kind of political science book by William David Mosquito, takes a kind of look at just systematic look at kind of, if you want to kind of develop an authoritarian regime, what sort of rules you kind of go to kind of step your way through. One is you want to kind of limit the number of people that keep you in power, right? The selector, you want to kind of make sure it's a narrow coalition that keeps you in power, and that you can replace that coalition, military leaders, oligarchs, etc., anytime you want to. And then another thing you kind of want to do is you kind of want to control the information environment. I think this needs to be seen in a bigger picture. Barry Weiss at CBS, actively doing political favors for certain voices, social media. I mean, I think there's an overwhelming theme in the right, especially this administration, taking active steps to control the information environment. And this is one kind of subset of using law enforcement to go after speech you don't like. And it's very stereotypical behavior that you would want to see if you wanted to consolidate power and you wanted to kind of maintain that power. And I went into this administration saying you never know when your last free and fair election was, and I think it's still worth thinking that we've already had our last free and fair election, and we are on a fundamentally different course for this country.
To present you as a pure virgin in Christ, but I am afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his cunning, Eve is the one in the Garden of Eden. He's
All the certain statements,
and then the Revelation does. And so the problem is that clearly the serpent is the one that deceived Eve, and then the serpent is that old serpent, the devil.
Leviathan is also called a serpent in the book of Psalms.
Right. That's
so if I'm saying that I saw Satan fall like I saw Satan fall
brethren, and you see him accusing Job in front of God. So
you think that the angel in Numbers 22 was like Satan in the book of Revelation?
No, well, I mean, obviously the word Satan has a semantic range of use, so, obviously it just means adversary or, opponent, but contextually we define our words. So when you see Satan mentioned, if you see him mentioned in a few different places in other scriptures, and, it'll be like, in that time there will be no Satan, and obviously it's saying there will be no adversary, but, we define our terms based off the context, and when we see the angel of the Lord, appear in front of Balaam when he's on his donkey or camel or whatever, that's an adversary to him in that moment, but it's not like Satan doing that, to my knowledge. But when Satan accuses Job, he's being the accuser of the brethren, and I think this looks up with his title in Revelation.
Now, this is my theory, right? I think there's a lot of missing stuff that is tradition that we no longer have. Like, when it says you're a murderer from the beginning, right? We don't have, like, I mean, people say this is talking about Job, right? But there's not like Job is not like the beginning of the world.
No, I think
there's some other stuff happening that's like lost. And even when I look at the Satan and Zechariah, what stands into the left hand of the Father, right? Like, you're standing up there, right? And he's still got a position. He's not fallen from heaven, right? And how he's operating is more like a disgruntled employee. But then when you go to the book of Revelations, this guy is bringing up armies and battling other angels, and it just looks like, even when you look in the book of Jude, it's like Michael and Satan over there talking about Moses' body. That within itself is like, again, it's kind of this thing where Satan can just be there, and it's like, it's not an issue.
Yeah, I think that God has there's an understanding that Satan has this role to tempt mankind, to test them. To my knowledge, but you guys can treat this as you will, but in the book of Jubilees, you see an encounter with Satan where Noah is praying, and God